Hey guys, Happy New Year. Welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest, Morgan McCarver, and she's a faith-based author and she's a ceramic artist. And today's talk is going to be all about entrepreneurship, faith-based resiliency, creativity, and building your own brand and business. And I'm happy to welcome her to the show. So, Morgan, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be awesome, I can tell.
We connected through Podmatch and talk about, kind of your original journey. I know you had some challenges with scoliosis and how that's influenced your work now.
Basically, I have always wanted a creative outlet, and that's kind of basically the gist of my story. I started dancing when I was young, and that was my creative outlet. That was my passion. I was dancing competitively, and then all of that was taken away when I was 14. I had scoliosis spinal fusion surgery. And so basically, I had three different curves in my back, creating an S curve type scoliosis, and they were varying by degrees, but they were progressively getting worse. They kind of tracked my progress for 3 years, doing x-rays and things. And after 3 years, back bracing wasn't working. And so at that point, I had to have the spinal fusion surgery. So I have two titanium rods and about 18 screws holding my spine straight now, and that will just be permanent for the rest of my life. And that really completely altered my path because I wasn't able to dance during that year-long recovery process. So I took a pottery class. My mom signed me up for just a kids' art camp that summer, and I completely fell in love with it. Just that relationship between me and the clay, and just all of these amazing things that I was able to get out of pottery. The clay is so flexible, and at the time, my body was no longer flexible. So I was building this relationship with the clay and starting to hone my craft, finding creativity in that way. And so that's pretty much the starting point for the rest of my life. I say from there, I went to college for ceramics, and I have my own business now, and it's led to writing a book and all of these other amazing things that I might never have found if I hadn't had that scoliosis surgery.
Yeah, what a amazing journey. And I love how you describe this idea of pottery and clay and how it's flexible and inflexible and how you were honing your craft. And you also have an Etsy store, so those links will be in the show notes for the audience to go and check out your work. So one thing is talking about so you creative outlets, you through ceramic pottery, you also wrote a book as well. So kind of share overcoming challenges and embracing opportunities, facing significant challenges, and how these experiences shape your outlook on life, art, and how do you advice giving for people facing similar hurdles?
Yes, I've experienced a lot of different hurdles in my life. So, just starting from the scoliosis surgery, that was a year-long recovery process where I wasn't supposed to pick anything up that was over 10 pounds. I wasn't supposed to bend or twist. I wasn't supposed to do pretty much anything that a teenager wants to do. And that was quite a big hurdle for me. So, finding that creative outlet where I could sit and do pottery at the same time, and I wasn't hurting my back anyway. I was able to still heal while I was working with my hands. That was very freeing. So I would say if you're physically experiencing a hurdle like that, it's always an amazing outlet to find some kind of creative passion that you're able to do, or whatever your passion might be, just finding that and being able to have something to look forward to, have a place to go. I always love going to the studio, and depending on how the clay is drying, it feels like, the clay needs me to be there because if I don't go today, the pieces will dry out too quickly. And so having kind of that compatibility and that accountability, if you will, between me and the clay, or even you and a friend, if you go to play music on the piano together, or whatever it might be, if you can find that kind of connection and drive to get you there, then that can really change your life and really encourage you to go. But yes, I did write a book, God the Artist, and that's about just finding all of the Bible verses that talk about pottery. There's so many between the Old and New Testaments, and it's just amazing to really look at these verses from a ceramics background, because you can get the gist of the verses without knowing ceramics. But when you really dive into the techniques and the properties of the clay and what God is really telling us, it's so much deeper, and the symbolism is so much more richer. So that's my hope through this book, God the Artist, is to kind of give you the background that I have and say, while you're learning all these techniques with me, you're also learning how much God loves you through all of this, and how my relationship with God was strengthened because he was speaking to me in the language that I understood. Being pottery, he would meet me where I was in the studio and really build that relationship with me that way.
Very fascinating. And I love how you describe, God or faith and, whatever religion or spirit, I'm a spiritual and, but what's interesting is that, you talk about this idea of, in this world that we live in, and I think it's going into chaos and, just erosion of morals and values. It doesn't have to be religion based, but it's just, greed and corruption. So talk about being an influencer and how your faith is, how you had to stay steadfast and making a difference through your work.
Honestly, that has been something I've been working on for a while. I really didn't pick a side on Instagram, if you will. I would just stick to posting pictures about my pottery, and that pretty much was my social media presence at the time. But then the Lord put that on my heart to write this book, and so once it got accepted to be published, honestly, I started realizing that I needed to do a lot of marketing. And that involves me being very vulnerable with my viewers and being very honest, showing exactly who I am and what I believe in. And so the whole time, I was trying to stay as neutral as possible. And I was really convicted in that. And the Lord was really challenging me in that way, that he instructed me to write this book and he's allowing it to be published. And it's such an amazing honor and accomplishment to have God the Artist be published. But in the same way, I now need to spread the word, spread the good news, tell about my book, and market myself in that way. So over the past few months, my page has become a lot more personal, a lot more vulnerable, and it has become a lot more Christian. And it's amazing to see the response to that. When I do become vulnerable and share my story, I get so many more comments, so many more people are able to relate to hearing a story, hearing my background, hearing about the days that I mess up, or the good and the bad, telling all of my life, and they're able to really connect with me in that way. And it's amazing that I've been able to reach more people and have more followers by being vulnerable and revealing myself in this way, because I thought staying neutral and showing pretty pictures of pottery would be more successful than actually showing my true self. And that's just not true. So it's been really encouraging to see that.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. The other thing that really stood out to me when you were talking was this idea of using downtime for periods of creative and I recently, a couple weeks, because we've had freezes and COVID and all these, and then it's just basically, if the whole world shuts down, you can work on your YouTube or Instagram or your Etsy store. And it's just basically, things can continue and you can build that, which I really enjoy. And you also talk about, the universe or God or, whoever you worship, what you worship is they, speaking through you and kind of, these nudges and hints. So moving on, like you talk about writing a book, which is really interesting. We'll get into the business side of that, but talk about as a small business owner in the art world, you have to navigate both creative and commercial aspects. And what are some of the most significant challenges and rewards in managing this business, and how has this influenced your approach?
That's a great question. I would say probably the biggest challenge is navigating, like you say, do you make what sells and what is trendy at the time, or do you stick true to what you enjoy making? And I've done both. I've made things that I was hoping would sell, and maybe they sold, maybe they didn't. And if it's not fun for me, if I'm not enjoying making what I'm doing, if I'm just making it to sell and then it doesn't sell, now what am I supposed to do? So my approach has really been to make what I enjoy making, um, and find my market, find my clients who appreciate my work. And so that sometimes involves me selling wholesale to states that I've never been to, or it might be that I'm going to very specific shops and specific galleries and trying to get my work in there that way. And it's just all these different things like that that I'm trying to make happen. But you never know what's going to happen. So it's also about being flexible and allowing yourself to try different things. So I'm always trying new things, seeing, and sometimes something I like to make doesn't sell as well as something else that I still like to make, but maybe not as well. So I've learned, you do have to sell product to be able to buy supplies to make more product. So there is a time where I am like selling things, and I have some pieces that I just know I'm going into the studio, I'm making these pieces. They might not be my favorite things to make, but they are the things that fund me making the things I love to make. So it's kind of that balance in that way.
It's similar to like someone who has works a job to pay the bills. They may not really enjoy it, but it's kind of it funds, their lifestyle, and which is quite interesting. So I'm really interested in this marketing part because so I'm assuming your book was self-published. Is that if that's go ahead.
No, actually, yeah, actually, it's published with Morgan James Publishing in New York. But the way that it's traditionally published, but the way that that works nowadays is they get it into those big bookstores for me, and I'm supposed to sell it everywhere else. So yeah, but the name Morgan James does lend itself to thinking that that could be my company, but
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, it's really interesting this dichotomy between traditional publishing and self-publishing. And there's pros and cons, which the audience can go to Morgan's website to check it out. I'm really curious about this ceramic store because I'm sure you go on tours or you go to conventions and conferences and you reach out. I'm sure you also have your social media to help promote it. Talk about how you do that. I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, for selling pottery, I try to have a, however you say it, whatever the idiom is, I try to have a an egg in every basket, I guess is a good way to put it. But so I am selling online. I sell wholesale through Fair. It's kind of like Etsy, but for retail shops who want to buy at wholesale prices. So I do that. I sell on Etsy as well. But pottery sells the best in person because it again is that relationship. If you're buying a mug, you want to know how that handle feels in your hand and how that cup weight ratio is going to feel when you're drinking your coffee out of it. And it's just a very personal kind of thing to buy because it's so handmade. So a lot of sales are in person, which means you're right. I am going to shows and I do festivals. Kind of fall and winter is like the show season. But I also do a residency once a year in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. It's more of like a tourist vacation town. So I'll go up there for a week and sell my things. But I really try to stay as versatile and diversified as possible, just trying to sell in as many different markets as possible. But also, I really, really love the idea of getting into galleries. And so there's different ways to do that. You can pay for a booth space, or you can like do it consignment. So like you would take commission and then the gallery would take commission. But basically it's great because you have your pieces out constantly. So I have a different full-time job so I can get benefits and all that good stuff. So I don't have the time to man my own shop, so to speak. So
Yeah.
being in these galleries, I'm in about 10 galleries between 3 different states. So being in these galleries really allows me to be able to have my work visible 7 days a week. And people can go in, people traveling, all different places can go see my pieces and buy them as soon as they want to, as soon as they walk in the door. And so that's another really successful way to sell pottery too.
Yeah. Really, it reminds me of because like when I wrote my books, I was going on tours in different cities and going into bookstores and selling online and also as getting into conventions and networking with key influencers to get on stages, which is really interesting, that hustle. One final question is this community and creativity, and you're actively involved in your church's youth program. You have a strong presence in North Carolina. And how do you see your role in communities? How does this sense of community feed back into your creative process and your work as a artist and author?
So one very easy way to have community is through pottery, doing shows together. I'm constantly seeing people who did last week's show. Now they're at this week's show. So it's great to catch up with people that way. I also share studio space with people. So we're always in there together. And the pottery community is amazing because while we're all selling pottery and in a way we're all in competition with each other, we also love to just help each other. We love to carry things in, help people get pots because pots are heavy to carry around. So we love to just provide that muscle and help people in that way. But we also love to share glaze recipes, techniques, tricks, any kind of way we can help each other. I think that's just such a beautiful community to have. But you're right. I do also serve at my church and in the youth program. And it's just another really amazing way to give back. I'm working with seventh grade girls. I'm one of the youth leaders. And it's amazing to see, like, I had my back surgery when I was in eighth grade. And so these girls are roughly my same age when I experienced that and when my faith really became my own. And so being able to provide and just kind of come full circle and give back to that has been really powerful. And I've even been allowed to come in and do pottery workshops for the students and teach pottery classes through the church. So I'm hoping that I can inspire young artists who maybe have never thrown on a pottery wheel before or had that experience. I can encourage them to find a passion in something, just like I did all those years ago when I was their age. So I do think it's really important to really invest in the next generations and encourage them in ways that they might not even know are possible.
Yeah, I love that. How can people find out more about you?
The best place is my website, and that's just my name. So www.morganmccarver.com. From there, you can follow me on social media. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can shop my book. You can shop my Etsy page or my fair site, and you can contact me that way. So I'd love to hear from you guys.
And for all the audience out there listening, Morgan for coming onto the show, and you be sure to check out her social media, give her a follow and like, and be sure to check out her Etsy store as well. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation.